All right. Welcome to our third episode on our mini series here on Life Church School for the Parenting Together podcast. I'm with David Bost, Harold Forbes, and Ruth Pingle. I think it's just worth saying as we say this, we try to do all of these podcasts in a heart posture of fear of the Lord for what we're talking about.
Yes.
This one in particular feels like that. I'll say we even just took a moment here to pray together as we're recording this, because I think this is an important topic. We're going to be talking about discipleship and academics in the school. A lot of what the root of our school is in the middle of this. And so in this episode in particular, if there's questions or things, approach one of these guys, ask them these questions,
Yes.
Bring your questions, your thoughts as we bring these. And so, David, I just want to start with this question and then hear from you guys as well. Is are discipleship and education things that are in tension in our school?
No, is the simple answer. They're not meant to be.
Mm-mm.
That's not how we should look at it. We shouldn't see them as two things pulling at each other or pulling a student away from, because it really should flow out of the discipleship side that produces the education. Because you have to start with discipling children in the fear of the Lord.
Yeah.
That's right.
Then you produce wisdom, understanding. But those things have to start out of coming to know Him and fearing Him. And when our kids are true disciples, fearing the Lord, education, learning comes out of that naturally.
Mm-hmm.
They become learners who love to learn because they love the Lord and they fear Him and they know Him. And so to me, there's not a tension there. We can create tension when our goals are different.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And when our hearts and minds are in the wrong place for our kids or for the way we think it should be. But these two actually flow hand in hand, and one comes right up underneath the other and
Yeah.
helps support it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
That's right.
I agree.
yeah.
Go ahead.
I think you're right, David. And the difficulty is that sometimes they are in tension in our thinking. We think that we have these two halves that somehow have to be held in tension to make a whole. We have discipleship. We want to be Christians. We want to raise our kids to be Christians,
Yeah.
to be disciples, but then they have to learn. We have to have academics so that they can go to
Mhm.
college and have career and all like
Mhm.
that. But we're missing the totality of Christian life, of kingdom living, which you mentioned, is that this is not just a Sunday school verse or intended to be something, that we think about in relation to Bible class, is that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, knowledge, understanding. Proverbs 1:7, 9:10, Psalms 1:11-10. You mentioned, as we were talking earlier, Ecclesiastes 12:13.
Don't give it away.
This is, which will come back around later.
And it'll be completely new.
But the fear of the Lord, knowing God, is where, because He's the author of everything,
Yeah.
but certainly of all wisdom, knowledge. He's the one who understands everything. So to develop a relationship with Him, it only makes even, I sort of hesitate to say good sense, but it only makes good sense. Even it's logical to say that when we know the one who originated everything, we have a much better shot at learning about everything and much more motivation because we know Him, we love Him, and we enter into a life with Him that draws us to want to know more. We want to know about Him more. We want to know about other things more. Making disciples is the call of the church, not making scholars. And discipleship, by definition, certainly involves learning. It's a learner is what a disciple is, which has to do with education. But discipleship is the training of the whole person rather than simply teaching and measuring, teaching and testing, retention of information. And that's what we usually mean by education when we think of it that way, because that's what we're used to in our history,
Right.
personally and societally, for the last many decades, is presenting information, teaching it, testing it. And I can't tell you how much stuff 50 and 60 plus years ago that I learned and tested well on.
Yeah.
I don't know. I wouldn't have a clue. I wouldn't have a clue today. But discipleship actually prepares the way for academic education to be placed 100%. In service.
Yes.
It's like discipleship, again, with this idea of the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. Discipleship prepares the way, makes a context, meaningful context to produce lifelong learners, to place that education in service. And the reverse is not true. Academic education on its own does not produce the context for a purposeful life. It's not that someone can't have a purposeful life who is focused on academic education. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying if we take it in extremes, academic education on its own does not make a context for a purposeful life. Yeah, I could say a lot more about that, but I'll probably stop right there.
That is about what I was going to say, just like that, Harold. No, but your last point there about education doesn't necessarily breed discipleship, but discipleship will breed a learner.
That's right.
I think those things are really important. That's why we're not emphasizing the education. Be educated, be educated, be educated. We're emphasizing be a disciple of Jesus, love the Lord.
That's right.
Start with the fear of God. Because when we run into issues with students in the school, not being good learners, not doing well in school, the issue is not, well, we need them to try harder. Well, we need to make sure that they get their homework done. We're going to have to put, and that's all that secular education has. They don't have the benefit of being able to dig into the heart of the matter and try and draw the child closer spiritually to a place where they're going to be able to be changed. But how many kids have we seen who have struggled academically coming up through school and then hit a moment of salvation, suddenly begin to love the Lord, everything changes for them. Now they're good students. We've seen that happen a lot of times. I think that is the key. They're not in tension in that they're fighting against each other or that you have to choose one or over the other. They're like two plants, in the garden that are both growing at the same time. But the academic is never going to produce the discipleship. However, that discipleship, I don't know that my metaphor is kind of failing me there, but that discipleship plant does affect the academic one. So
that's the same as a general parenting principle. It's like, when do you see your kids acting better at home? When they're loving the Lord and being disciples, or when they're not. It doesn't mean that every child that's not being a disciple is being a terrible child, but you're the comparison of the two. It's like someone who's truly being a disciple is going to be a good child, going to be an obedient child at home. Yeah. Just by nature, by definition.
Well, I was a good student, but I remember the moment that I realized if I don't do this homework assignment, I'm actually disrespecting my teacher, which then by association is disrespecting God, which means I'm in rebellion against God if I don't do my best on this homework assignment. I should probably do my best on the homework assignment.
That's really good. Yeah.
I'll give you a different kind of example, but I think it fits. Sometimes in the school over the last few years, we've had the opportunity and the privilege to help some kids that have had a lot of trauma in their life. And one of the things I've learned is that kids with trauma often hit academic walls.
Yes.
But when their relationship with God changes and grows, that academic wall comes down and they learn in a way that they couldn't learn as well before.
As God heals them.
And God, because God touches them and something in them heals and they can move forward in learning, but learning itself didn't produce that. It took God producing that in them, and then they excelled at the learning that they struggled with before.
That's very good.
So you can see that principle at work that you're talking about in the school, even now with kids.
Can I make one more comment on this? The contrast between institutionalization and organic approach to anything, school, church, home, corporate life. Institutionalization always provides more metrics, for measuring, outcomes. You can state more goals, measure against it harder. Organic life is harder because you don't have the metrics.
Yeah.
And so if you just think about it, it's like, well, is it easier to say, let's disciple our children all together as a community of faith? That's our goal, is to produce disciples.
Amen.
Mm-hmm.
Those who love they love the Lord their God with all their heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love their neighbors as themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
How are we going to do that? By coming together and using every means at our disposal.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty vague. And on a day-to-day basis, it's harder to do that than just to say, okay, let's just write it all down. Not that we don't have written down rules, regulations, et cetera, for order. But you don't have the same metrics. You don't have the same ability to measure and to test as to say, we want to achieve 80% A's and B's. And so we're going to do this, and we're going to measure, and then check it off. We measured it, we did it, we move on. And there certainly can be value in approaching that, all of the above with the right heart. But let's just acknowledge that what we're proposing, what the Bible proposes to us, Israel had the metrics. They had all of the hard rules to follow and everything,
Right.
but it did not work. It turned out that was a very hard life to live, and to live in grace with a bit of mess and a bit of, with love at the root of it, love and grace and faith, believing that God is able to work it all together for good. That's harder, but that's what produces what God's after in the end.
Excellent.
Yep.
I know we'll talk about the role that academics play in this, and I do mean that role because that's not a goal. I think if we're jumping ahead, right, it's a role.
Yeah.
But really, it comes down to, as you guys are talking, Proverbs 1:7 and 9:10. It's the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. If we were looking at our pedagogy for Life Church School, we want our kids to fear God and to know the Holy One. And that's where learning is unlocked. We either believe that or we don't.
Right.
We either trust that or we don't. So I just want to ask you guys, both as principals, educators, parents, how do we make sure we don't place those in tension then? Like, how do we end up in the place where we're putting those things in tension? And how do we avoid that? Maybe I'll start with Harold.
Well, I have a golden rule, a one answer fits all for when you're trying to decide how do you avoid doing this or how do you not do that. And my answer is, don't do that. So that's just don't overemphasize. But as we've already said, really, I don't know that even applies here, because we're going to emphasize discipleship, but really and truly in the context of not just school, but raising a generation, training children, they're kind of indistinguishable. They should be a little bit indistinguishable because education is such a necessary component for sure.
Right. Yes.
Of discipleship that, I don't know, the emphasis, I'd say rather than, this is maybe a subtle distinction, but rather than which one to emphasize or don't overemphasize, don't separate them, or like the first question about tension, between them. We have to consider them as parts of the whole, and kind of difficult to distinguish from one another. It's like if we're in math class, are we emphasizing discipleship or education? If we're in Bible class, are we emphasizing discipleship or education? Well, it sort of seems like on the surface, if we're in Bible class, we're emphasizing discipleship, and if we're in math, we're emphasizing education. But why in math class would you want to be undisciplined and to
right?
not discipled? It's like, and again, the idea that I don't understand how numbers work, but I know the person that created them. Maybe not that every math class has to start and end with prayer, but this is a life thing.
Do.
This is
whether the teacher leads it or not.
Oh God, help me. But this is this is a way of life. This is a kingdom life. And so the perspective in life that I'm approaching this math, whether I'm teaching it or learning it, with the idea that I can understand this because I know the one who created it. So it's a discipleship process. It's certainly education in that I want to learn that information because it will help me. But the same with Bible. I want to be a disciple through Bible class, but I also want information. I want to learn the history of Israel. I want to learn facts and have knowledge from the words of the Bible that will help me understand the one who wrote it and who created it. And I think that an important point here is that parents have to be, how do we not create this tension between the two? Parents have to be in on this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Parents have to really be sold on
Mhm.
this idea, have to be, I shouldn't say it that way. That's not what I mean, but they have to buy in. We're
Yeah,
not selling
buy
them
in.
anything, but they have
Yeah.
they have to acknowledge
Mm-hmm.
and really believe, really understand this is not nudge, nudge, wink, wink. We know we're going to have a lesser than education, so we just
Yeah, no.
No.
say it's worth it. It's worth it to have
Mm-mm.
God, so we just know we're sacrificing education. No, that is really not how this works.
That's
And so
right.
parents have to understand that, and they have to clearly portray that at home
Mm-hmm.
and not on purpose or inadvertently portray otherwise
That's right.
at home, to where their children get the idea that it's like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
I get it. Because children pick up on
Yes, they
Yeah.
do.
on that.
Yes,
If
they
you
do.
subtly think, eye roll, it's like, well, it's not going to get the kind of math education you need to be a doctor. It's like, well, but you'll be a good disciple.
Yeah.
Kids pick up on that
Yeah.
and begin to disrespect and devalue what's being offered to them. Parents have to commit to the idea that we're in a process of raising the next generation to live excellent lives, fully submitted to the Lord first and foremost, and that results in the best ability to apprehend academic knowledge and understanding. The idea that true learning happens in God's presence, this is really important, I think, that the idea that when we say that real learning begins and the fear of the Lord begins in the
Yes.
presence of God, that doesn't
Yes.
mean that we stay in chapel all day, that we have
Right.
unending Bible classes
Right.
and worship, or that just means in all of life, all together, teachers, parents, grandparents, everybody, the whole community of faith is involved in helping the next generation, as well as insisting of ourselves that we pursue a deeper relationship
Mm-hmm.
with God that gives us access to Him and Him access to us
Very
Yeah.
good.
all day, every day, everywhere.
Very
Yeah.
good.
Amen.
I think too, on the parent side of things, like to take your example of math class, if my child comes home and is struggling with math, struggling with whatever, like maybe a bad attitude because the teacher this or that, or because I'm never going to be able to understand this, or because, whatever, that actually, rather than giving me an opportunity to teach them the math, which I would do, yes, but also I'm not going to bypass the heart issue
That's right.
that I'm noticing.
That's right.
I'm going to deal with that heart issue first
Right.
as a parent. But that happened, that was opened up and exposed because of the academic process.
Yep.
So that academic process, then it's not just, well, let me teach you how to do it. Great. Move on with your life. It's why didn't you maybe ask your teacher about this in class? What's the root behind that you wouldn't speak
That's
to them
really
about
good.
it? Or why are you now you're so angry that you can't understand, or you say you hate this so much, like why now I'm part of the process. And I think that also goes for the teachers that we have in the school too, that the teachers understand the first priority actually is discipleship.
That's
Yeah.
right.
And so if I'm teaching a math class and it's a bunch of bad attitudes, then the first thing I need to do is not push through the class or take them all to McDonald's and buy them a soda because we just can't handle it today. Or, sometimes you do that, I guess. But
Sorry.
I mean, I loved when your brother was in school and we got to go have Starbucks in my math class. But if I'm facing a math class and all of these students were having bad attitudes about this, I'm not going to quit. I'm going to deal with the bad attitudes because
Yes.
primarily I know what I'm there for is discipleship.
That's right.
And it's harder than teaching.
Yes.
That is right.
If we teach and we just hope that there's disciples in the room, like that makes your job so much easier when
Yeah.
you just walk in and it's like, I love, leading worship for leadership conferences because like, yay, everybody there loves the Lord already and has like strong faith. And so they come in and they're ready to worship. It's easy. That's really fun. It's like, I think sometimes that's maybe what we want as teachers or as parents. We want like, can you just be okay? Like, and just receive the things that I'm teaching you and let's just move on. But discipleship is the really, really hard work of raising children. And the lovely thing about the school is that it doesn't leave you on your own then to do it with your kids, but it puts your children in a place where other people now are invested in your child's life and in their discipleship. And so you're not alone to be doing it.
I want to I've heard you talk about this. I at least want to throw it out for your perspective. Sure. That's the side of my child is struggling, attitudes revealed, not great at academics or struggling with a topic. Sure. We have a lot of bright students as well who maybe it feels like the bar is too low for them. Is it as simple as, oh, we need to raise the academic rigor, or, oh, we just need to bump you up a grade? Like, I've heard you talk about this, and I think your perspective is valuable in this. I wanted to hear you say this.
Well, so this is what I say to my own kids, or I've said this in some other situations where, maybe a kid is really gifted and so worried that they're going to be bored and maybe act out in class, or need to be bumped up a grade because they're not being challenged enough, and we want them to be academically excellent. And I just think, don't we also want them to be excellent at like loving their brother? Don't we also want them to be excellent at being obedient when mom says take out the trash? Don't we also want them to be kind and not to think of themselves first in all things? Don't we also want them to tell the truth and not lie all the time? Most of the time, a child who is like really excelling academically, because he's a child and a human being wearing flesh, has some other character deficiency that they could be working on. So maybe they're a really great reader and they should be bumped up to a higher read, maybe. Or maybe, like one of my language arts teachers said for us, is build your patience by waiting and staying on track as the slow person reads out loud. And don't go ahead and laugh at what's happening 2 paragraphs down the page and making everybody else feel left out because you got there first. Why don't you exercise the fruit of the Spirit, that's patience, and wait with them and stay with them like that? I think they're like, lying is a big one. Like, a lot of kids lie, and there are always things that you can work on that are outside of academics, because we're in a church school where we're not just concerned about the academics.
Right.
That's good.
David, your thoughts on this conversation here?
I love it, actually, because one of the things you find is you have that 1 or 2 kids that excel in all the classes. Okay. But usually they excel in a couple of classes, and then there are classes that are not their favorite or not as easy. And you can help them work in that one as well, because maybe they're excelling in math and they're just flying, but over here in language, they're hating every minute of writing.
Yeah.
And they need some help, both with the character side of that, because the attitude comes out, but also the practical. So you may steal a little time over here and say, okay, why don't you work on this? I mean, there are so many ways to challenge kids without pushing them to the next grade, because what I've seen is sometimes putting them in the next grade or trying to bump up the rigor actually creates other issues, character-wise, that you weren't expecting, that become a detriment to them because they weren't ready for all of that on the character side, just because the academics was easy.
Yeah.
And so I think Ruth's right. I think there are so many other places to challenge our kids right now. I think one of the things we did in the school this year is I had a student that was really good and finished early, wanted to go on to the next thing. I didn't let him go on to the next thing. For the first several weeks when he finished his math, he came and served other kids.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And I watched his heart change about serving in general, because he found all of a sudden, I I am good at this, and I'm actually good at helping
Yeah, so good.
somebody else
So
do
good.
it. And he didn't know he was good at it.
Yeah.
You know? And so those moments are places to disciple our kids, not just to make it academically harder for them.
And I don't think there's a hard and fast rule that we would never
Right.
bump
It's
a
a
kid
perspective.
to
Oh, no.
another. Yeah. But the idea that if my kid's doing great academically, they should be able to progress. Like, well, there are other things to consider. And
Right.
because we are a church school, we have the privilege of considering those things.
That's
Yeah.
good.
So to this point, I would say that from what I'm getting from what you are all saying, discipleship is our number one heart here. These things are not intention, but discipleship is the pursuit.
Yes.
That is what we care about.
Yes.
This is my example just as a teacher, and if it's not what I should be doing, we'll edit this out in post. But I had the privilege of teaching high school geography, which, if you don't know, that is probably the most boring class I think you could ever take. So they weren't super interested in that when we started. But I asked them all at the beginning, like, hey, what's your plans for after high school? What's your dream job, dream college? They all answer, give their answer or whatever, and then make them answer, okay, well, how does this class apply to that? And some of them could answer it and some of them couldn't. The trick was at the end of it, I said, I don't really care. Like, I don't really care what your dream job is. I don't really care if you see how this directly applies to it. But doing something that you don't want to do or you might view as boring is going to build something in you.
That's good.
And it's like, do I care that they know all 50 states and capitals and all the different little countries in Southeast Asia? And honestly,
It's great for a road
probably
trip.
not particularly. Yeah, right. And there is value. There's practical value in that.
Yeah. sure.
But I think there's the heart behind that we want to see in our school, right? Is, no, I want to see you push in and try to do
That's
this and
right.
see what the Lord would form in you through that. So that kind of tees us up to our next question here. We believe deeply in education. And I
Yes.
think we're starting to unpack what we mean by that. But do we believe in academic excellence? Because education and academics aren't always synonymous. So let's start with David here. And I want to ask you, do we believe in academic excellence at LCS?
I would say we want all our kids to do the very best
Yeah.
that each kid is capable of at the level they're capable of.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that flows out of their relationship with God.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a kid that doesn't want to do their homework, doesn't try, that may not just be because of the academics. That actually comes back to the place of, where are you walking with Jesus? How do you see what God's asking you to do? How do you have that relationship?
Yeah.
And so while, yes, we want to do things excellently,
Yep.
and we want to have a place of, yeah, we do a good job at what we're doing and the kids are doing good, that academic excellence comes out of, or the having excellent academics comes out of that relationship with God first.
Yeah.
And yeah, we want to, the way I would say that is, we strive to do our very best. We want excellence.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
The Lord did excellence. He
Absolutely.
required excellence out of
Mm-hmm.
us. But it may look different with every kid.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think that's right, David. I think it's to some degree, it's a measure of our stewardship of what God's given us to be excellent with it. We're, 1 Corinthians 10:31, whatever you do, do all to the
Yep.
glory of God. Colossians 3:23, whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord, not for yourself, not for men, rather. Daniel was exalted above his peers because he had a spirit of excellence about him. There's something about excellence and doing our best that is just good stewardship of what God has given us, and that's in everything, just across the board.
Mm-hmm.
So to not aggressively pursue, let's say, intellectual development, would be failing to train our children to do their best in every area.
Very
and I
good.
think you make the point. Again, the whole metric thing. It's difficult to have metrics for each individual person, just like it's hard to write enough laws all of the laws Israel had, it wasn't enough to make everybody
Yeah.
perfect. But God has he has the ability to individualize a program for everybody. He has perfect understanding, and he knows exactly how to make it work and what everyone is capable of and how to challenge them up to that level to where he can be glorified. And I think, again, the idea that true learning only exists in the presence of the Lord. As we develop a relationship and encourage our kids to develop a relationship with the Lord that's deeper, there's an innate curiosity that develops, a motivation to learn that comes from knowing the Creator. And I want to just interject, all the things that we're saying, it's all a work in progress. There's no insistence of ourselves or anyone else of perfection,
right?
Of children, of parents, of ourselves, of teachers, of perfection. It's a process that we're all working towards together. But I think there's we should begin to expect and help develop in our kids that curiosity. Is like, well, ask God. It's like, well, think about, why would God do that, or why how did this work? And God will help you understand that. I think that's not being overly religious or spiritual to put things in that framework for kids. Here's something to ponder. Is the achievement of academic excellence more dependent on the teacher or the student? When it comes right down to it. Because I think, for the most part, I think sometimes we tend to assume that really is dependent on the curriculum that we have here and on the teachers. And maybe when grade cards come out, it gets a little more focused on the student. I don't know how that works. Both are involved, to be sure, but motivated learners are going to achieve academic excellence, just like what you were saying. Some kids are better at doing this than that. Everybody is better at doing this or doing that, or learning this, learning that. But where students aren't interested, aren't motivated, what they're not interested in, they won't learn. My son Evan, a little bit of a special case, but we've always noticed, in terms of trying to encourage him to develop in intellectual pursuits and academic pursuits, something that he was interested in, he could learn it.
Right.
Something that he had no interest in, it didn't matter how much you broke it down. He didn't care. He wasn't going to learn it. And I think something that we can do, an important biblical principle here, is to train up children in the way that they should go. And when they're old, they won't depart from it. That was, as a good, I won't say what denomination, but as a good denominational boy when I was growing up, that just meant keep preaching the gospel. And when they're older, they'll be hellions when they're younger, but they'll be saved. They'll be saved when they get older. But it's not just talking about salvation. That's talking about life. Train them up in the way they ought to go. Which way should they go?
Yeah.
And I think that to help kids recognize what are your gifts and callings, what are your interests and desires? What are you interested in? What would you like to do? What are the things that God's put in your heart? Help them recognize that, and then offer opportunities, make opportunities for them to begin to learn and to grow and to develop in these things. And so I just want to say, that is not just a parent and teacher thing. That's grandparents, that's aunts and uncles, that's brothers and sisters, that's friends. Because again, this is a kingdom community. This is a community event called life. And it involves all of us. And but I think that's a key, is to very early on to start recognizing things in kids to help them understand what their interests are, maybe what they should pursue, and help them lean that direction. Give them opportunities to develop in that, and to motivate, the academic excellence.
That's good. I would say, to answer the question, do we believe in academic excellence? Yes, we do. And we want the academic excellence that flows out of discipleship.
Right.
But we are not confused about our main mission with this school.
That's right.
And our main distinctive is not going to be that we are offering all the best courses with all of the best teachers and all of the latest and greatest in training, and that we are going to have lab after lab and extracurricular after. That's not our mission.
Yeah.
Our mission is to create disciples. We believe that good disciples and a good discipleship process leads to academic excellence. Should we have the best students in the city? Absolutely, because we have the Spirit of God. And so we know we don't need to get it backwards by working really hard at academics and then hoping that the kids are going to get Jesus by osmosis or something.
Sure.
We want to work really hard at discipleship
Yes.
while
right.
we are training academically.
That's right.
And we believe that out of that, we should develop the best students.
Yeah.
That's good.
And I'd say, just to throw a couple caveats and clarifying points in there too, is like those things aren't our call, but in our call to be excellent in that, we are looking to push ourselves in ways to
Yes.
make this a better environment for learning.
Absolutely.
David has spent
Yes.
significant amounts of time working towards this accreditation process that
Yep.
we have now accomplished. There's those things that we are looking for. Students learning best from things that they find interest in. It's not that we're going to let them skip college
That's right.
algebra,
Mm-hmm.
but we should sow into what we know
Mhm.
God is doing in
That's
them. My hope and my goal for every student that I have is not that they would remember, again, every country that they learn in world geography. It's that they would fall in love with the process of learning.
Absolutely.
And if you can do that and you carry that into your adult life, into your later life, I'm always going to want to be learning because I want to know the Lord
Mhm.
more.
Mhm.
And I want to be driven towards that. I think Tom used to say this all the time, that the most dangerous young person he can think of is one full of the Spirit and with a trained mind. And that's what we want for our kids. We want them full of the Spirit
good.
and we want them to have trained, sharp minds.
That's right.
But that does look different per student. So to make this even more specific than I really drill down on this will be our last maybe point that we'll get into is academic excellence a kingdom measurement in and of itself? And I will let the panel decide who answers that first as we all look at Ruth.
Well, I had not thought of this question before. And so my initial thought is that I don't know that the kingdom measures things academically. Otherwise, our salvation and our usefulness to God would be dependent on how well we perform.
That's right.
And,
Right.
and that's just not thankfully, how God operates. He knew that we were going to fall short. And so he paved the way by the sacrifice of his son, who took all of that, all of our failure, all of our inadequacy upon him. And now we can be right and useful to God and the kingdom through Jesus. So I don't know if in scripture there are places where you can find, yes, this person did well in the kingdom because of their academics. I mean, if we're intelligence or, excellence, I think those maybe are different. But if we're talking about like because of your learning, I mean, we were talking about the disciples where people were surprised listening to them speak because they were unlearned, but they were speaking the truth of God that was undeniable. And the people were confused by that they understood spiritual things, but shouldn't have been able to by natural standards because they didn't have the learning. And I was thinking about Ecclesiastes when we have, Solomon, who the wisest man, and he had searched through all of the earth to find all of the knowledge, given himself to all of the things to discover what it was that was going to be best for him. And he says, folly, folly. And at the end of it, this is what he says in 12, 13, and 14. He says, the end of the matter, all has been heard. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. For God will bring every deed into judgment with every secret thing, whether good or evil. your deeds can be whether or not you do your homework. Your deeds can be your secret attitudes toward your teachers that are not right. Absolutely. But the point of that is that it begins and ends with fearing God and keeping his commandments. That's the whole duty of man. And there are going to be many people that we meet in heaven that maybe were not the sharpest knife in the drawer, or were people that you would say, wow, you really could have applied yourself and done more in the earth. But they gave themselves to the Lord in enough of a pure-hearted way that God saw fit to bring them into his kingdom. And that's what matters. I don't want to be a really academically wonderful person who goes to hell because I missed the point of everything. A really smart person in hell, or, somebody who's not and gets to be in heaven, like if that's the choice. Yeah. Thankfully, it's not, because we do believe that, being a disciple, that walking with God, the fear of the Lord, that is going to teach us things, and we will be excellent. Like we said, yes, we do believe in academic excellence.
Right. Well, to that, I like that you bring up the disciples point, because they were, all of them, unlearned. The most learned ones you could look at was maybe Nathaniel. He's like, there's no guile in you. So you get the idea that he was probably smart with the Jewish law, but he still would have been viewed as unlearned if he was talking to a pagan. Despite what the chosen has led you to believe. Matthew, if you were a tax collector, you were actually probably a tax collector because you were good for nothing else and your own people spurned you. So you were okay with betraying them. So he probably wasn't a super genius. That's just a caveat there. But Harold, can you talk a little bit? You were talking before we got on about Paul, because, Paul is very learned. Do you want to talk a little bit about that point and how the Lord was using that even in the midst of it?
Yeah, I hadn't really thought that before, but Ruth was making the point just in our pre-conversation that she just made about the disciples. And I thought, that may well be why Paul, who certainly was a learned person who was able then later to refute the Jews who were trying to be smarter than this new religion. But it's probably in the design of God that Paul was not a disciple, an apostle early on, so that there was the others didn't defer just to him and to his knowledge and to his wisdom.
Because can you imagine that?
Yeah.
Well, even we see then in Scripture, the measurement of the apostleship wasn't how well can you come and teach this new gospel. It was, were you a witness of the Lord Jesus? Like, did you interact with him? And that is even... For Paul, as learned as an academic as he was, how many times do we see the authority that he based his teaching on was that he had encountered Jesus on the road to Damascus and seen him face to face.
That's right.
He was tutored by him in the wilderness. Over and over again, statements like, the wisdom of this world, I don't want your salvation to rest on cleverly devised tales, but on demonstration and power. The Lord will use academics. That's why we want people with young people, especially with trained minds.
That's right.
But that wasn't what qualified Paul.
That's right.
Did you know Jesus?
That's right. In Philippians 3, he lists his CV, and then he says, I counted all his loss as rubbish compared to the knowledge of Christ.
Yeah. Very good.
If it's all right, I pulled up for just a minute the school's vision statement.
Yeah.
Is to aid in the discipleship of families. First of all, we're not talking about just discipleship of children in the school.
Right.
We're talking about discipleship of families.
Yeah, that's right.
And we do that intentionally because you don't just disciple a child. Usually there are other things that are tied to a child that have to come into what the family is living like. So it's through the discipleship of that. But I like this because the wording says through structured biblical training of children and youth, using the discipline of the educational process.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Educational or academics excellence, I don't think is a measure in the Bible, but I do think we use the process of how we educate our children to produce disciples.
Absolutely.
And that discipleship isn't just about the children, it's about the families. Because I'm jumping probably questions a little bit, but the other part of this is, is there something more to the education than just the educational the academics. And there is. The goal of the academics is to help us with the discipleship of the family.
Yeah. Yeah.
The child, yes, because he's who's here 8 hours a day in the school. But the attitudes that rise up sometimes are because those attitudes are in the mom and dad. And we got to go back and talk to mom and dad and say, hey, do you see this? This is in your kid. Where do you see this in you?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I got to change something in me and in my life at home in order to help my kid produce something different in their life. And so I don't see the academic excellence as being a kingdom measure, but I do see the educational process and the learning of academics or learning
Very good.
as part of how we train them to be good disciples.
Very good.
Because there's so many ways that it reveals their hearts.
That's right.
Great.
And parents' hearts.
Yeah, that's right. And what a blessing, not condemnation to the parents over like, we found something in your house that's wrong.
No.
Yeah, come on.
It's like, hey, we're bearing in the fact that we love one another, bear with one another's burdens.
That's right.
Here's something that this looks like might be happening. Can we help you
Yes.
with this?
Come on.
And then you know
Yes,
what?
yes,
Yes.
You can be free in a way that you didn't plan on, that maybe you
Yeah.
didn't know you could, that maybe you were afraid you couldn't be. And
That's right.
your child may have been honestly cursed with what winds up being a generational curse just out of habit and not knowing how to get out of it and do different. This is how it's a community, and it's a
That's
kingdom
right.
life process.
That's right.
The academic achievement, I mean, it could be an indicator of kingdom progress and life and things like that, but more could be considered a fruit of effective discipleship,
that's right.
when it's all working right.
Yeah.
Come on.
Because you alluded to this a while ago, but you can have test scores that are off the charts, other measures of intellectual achievement, but without achieving we've been talking about spiritual formation here a lot in the last little bit. Without achieving that, there's it means nothing, in this life and certainly not in eternity. And academic excellence, I made myself a note here. Academic, not accidental excellence.
Accidental excellence. That's my specialty, actually.
Academic excellence in the context of that kind of spiritual formation is one important means to that end result, and then also a significant fruit of the whole process. But it's not an indicator on it, not a measurement on its own of kingdom life.
Yeah.
That's right.
We're looking to develop a generation that'll love the Lord with all their heart, soul, mind, and strength, love their neighbor as themselves. And academic excellence on its own is just not able to produce that.
That's right.
And maybe a little off ramp here, but the community element, and we've been touching on this all the way through, but this community element of education, one mistake that we can make as parents or teachers, I think, is to look at each individual child and their measure of how they're doing and things. And of course, we understand that we're preparing them not just for college or for career or for better life, just them as an individual, but church, school in the context of the local church, we're preparing them for kingdom life and for local church life.
That's
and to
right.
be those who are participating in the multi-generational body of Christ in the local church.
Amen.
So to be able both to submit, but also to be able to contribute.
Amen.
And so that all of us together, like Luke 1:17, one of my favorite scriptures that I apply to the idea of school and education. So all together we're becoming a people prepared for the Lord.
Yeah, that's really good.
Bruce, any final thoughts here?
No. I think we should maybe do everybody always says no and then says the thought that they had. Sorry, Harold.
That's all right.
I said no because I really meant it. But then I thought, well, since you asked me, I guess I'll say this thing I wasn't going to say. I think we should do one episode on the vision statement of the school.
That's good.
That would be very good.
Vision and mission.
Yeah.
Yep.
Very good.
Well, I think if there's like a takeaway to summarize this time, is that we believe that the educational process is more than just about academics. We believe deeply in the heart of discipleship.
Yeah.
And to echo Harold's point, this hopefully doesn't come across as accusatory in any way. So I want to leave, maybe just as a test, some reflective questions. Again, not accusatory questions, but something as parents, maybe if we would ask ourselves these questions, it might reveal some places in us. One that I wrote down is, are you caused anxiety and deep worry about your child's academic results? And I'm not talking about their test grades, but where are they going to end up at the end of their schooling? Are they going to be good enough to go to a college or to function in a workplace? Are you focused on preparing them to function and be able to, quote unquote, take care of themselves, have a career, have a job? If that's primary, that's probably not a kingdom perspective. And then the last one I would say is, are you focused on creating somebody who's able to function, again, quote unquote, normal in the secular world? Or are you focused on creating somebody who's peculiar, a disciple?
Come on.
And I think if we answer some of those, it might reveal places where academics or other things in the process of raising our kids or educating our kids can take root in ways that they shouldn't. So thank you guys for your time. Thanks for speaking to this. And who knows, maybe we'll have more on this subject in the future. So thank you,
Thanks,
guys.
Ryan.
Good.